Joining us right now from Citi Field is our own Joel Sherman. Joel, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, BK.
So, Joel, it's a new, fresh beginning for these Mets. Let's just concentrate on Mendoza again. You knew him with the Yankees. You covered him there as the bench coach. Your thoughts on Mendoza now getting this position?
Yeah, to know Carlos Mendoza is to like Carlos Mendoza. I think he is a forthright guy. I think I mentioned this on the show yesterday with you, BK, on MLB Now. He kind of follows a very traditional path of how somebody becomes a manager. He was a former minor league player. He managed in the minor leagues. He was an instructor in the minor leagues. He managed in winter ball. He managed a WBC team, and he was a bench coach for a first division team in New York. A major league team next to Aaron Boone with the Yankees. This is how somebody used to become a manager, and it's just how somebody did. In a lot of ways, he follows a path not dissimilar from Buck Showalter, who he succeeds.
Right. The shift from Craig Counsell, I know it's not something David Stearns and the rest are going to be talking about there, but your thoughts on that, in that it seemed, since Stearns waited out a year, Craig Counsell's contract ended, it was going to be Craig Counsell, or at least they were going to try for Craig Counsell. Your thoughts on that shift and what you heard today?
Yeah, it was interesting how little Craig Counsell came up. Again, I'll reference, we talked a little yesterday. I just think that when Craig Counsell was able to get the combination of the record contract, 5 years at $40 million, and get a location that he was comfortable with, the Midwest, where his family's from, where his kids go to both high school and college, it was to his liking. To watch Craig Counsell's press conference yesterday, it sounded like once the Cubs fell in love with him and were willing to meet his price, he became a one-team guy, and I'm not really sure the Mets could have gotten back into that. Okay.
Well, yeah, fell in love with him and met his price. Those are two separate things. Yes. You get both. That's very lucrative. It's funny, though. Again, when you've been through this enough, you certainly have. I have. National League Manager of the Year will be awarded on our network tonight, Joel. Here are the last 4 National League Managers of the Year: Mike Shildt, Don Mattingly, Gabe Kapler, Buck Showalter. How about that? The bloom seems to come off the rose rather quickly, wouldn't you say? Like, all those guys had success, and yet they're all gone. What about that?
These are tough jobs. People talk all the time, BK, that the power has gone out of the manager, except for that he's held responsible when things go wrong. Front office guys don't get fired nearly at the clip that managers do. They usually get to pick a couple of different guys. I think the manager is as important as ever before, and I'm fascinated to see how Carlos Mendoza does, because it feels like somebody who has earned the right to be in a major league dugout as a manager, and he's getting it in a big place. And this is not a place, if you take Davey Johnson out, that first-time managers have worked. So I'm curious if this one will. He seems to clearly have the support, obviously, of the person who hired him, David Stearns. And David Stearns is a veteran guy, and I do think a smart, patient guy, and will work to try to create an infrastructure so that it does work for a new manager.
You mentioned the word patience right there. Now, the Mets have a nice young group that could use some playing time, right? It's Francisco Alvarez obviously behind the plate. Now, he's going to be there. But the other players, maybe they haven't broken through. Do you think the Mets will have the institutional patience to play them, or do they go back and into that, hey, let's win now mode? What do you think they do?
BK, I think one of the toughest things to do in any sport is to try to live in two worlds, which is to win now and to be thinking about being good in the future. And yet it's the world that David Stearns and ultimately Steve Cohen are going to try and want to live in. I do think that they are probably somewhat encouraged to see that the Phillies as a wild card last year and the Diamondbacks as a wild card this year made a run to the National League pennant and won it, got to the World Series. And I think the Mets feel like their current collection of players, with whatever they add in trade and free agency, could get to the 85 to 90 wins to get in, while not disrupting the long-term plans to build around a lot of the prospects they got both in trades at the last trade deadline, in recent drafts, and we're here that Billy Epler inherited and now David Stearns did. It is a tough world to live in, but I think it's the one they're going to try very hard to live in.
Yeah, usually, not always, but maybe with more money it's possible. Usually you're doing one or the other. The Mets might try to do both at the same time. Joel, thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, BK, thank you.